Hi, everybody. I'm here with Jim, and he's been kind enough to send me the photographs that we're going to be looking at in the course of this video. And he had been following my channel for a while and thought he had a good idea of what I look for, and he was right. So I invited him to join me today on this interview to look at the pictures that he took and to talk about them. And before we go into the PowerPoint that I put together with the photos, just like to invite Jim to say a few words about himself.
Okay. Hi, Michelle. Thanks for inviting me to do this. This is great. You're kind of like, I have been following your channel for a while. You're kind of like a rock star to me. So this is really cool. Yeah, my name's Jim. I live in London, Ontario. I've been visiting Toronto for about 3 months now, and I've seen a lot of interesting architecture and different landscapes that I thought were in line with your research. So yeah, I thought, like you said, I was interested in, well, I thought you might be interested in some of the things I was seeing with my own eyes. So I just been walking around Toronto a lot for the last few months, and I've had a good time doing it. And yeah, I just really appreciate this opportunity.
Well, thank you for accepting my invitation. And I feel like I'm getting to know Toronto myself, not only through the photos that you've sent, but photos that other people have sent and some research that I've been doing. And it makes me want to go see Toronto myself. Because it's looking more and more to me like a really important place on the Earth's grid. And a number of reasons for that, and we'll go into some of that today with the pictures that you've taken.
Okay.
And I divided the pictures into basically groupings of where you were when you were taking them. It's like a couple of big blocks, a little separated by a little bit of distance from each other. And so I've got it set up in a PowerPoint, and we'll just go around the blocks and take a look at it and see what you saw when you were taking them and anything else that stands out about that. At first, I had these in the order that I had saved them on my computer, and then I realized that they group together very well. So we're going to start with the Central Technical School on Bathurst Street. And what we're told about it is that the cornerstone was laid in 1913, and the Prime Minister of Canada, Robert Borden, laid cornerstone after a design competition was won by Ross and McFarlane of Montreal. And I just want to point out that you see design competition a lot when you're talking about this architecture, and not just here, but in a lot of other places that I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's an example of what's called the collegiate Gothic architectural style for colleges and high schools of the late 18th and early 19th century. And again, that's typical also. The same style that you'll see here is found in schools all over the place, in high schools and colleges. So I'm going to go ahead and start showing the pictures. Is there anything about the stairs section that struck when you took the picture?
So just the stonework. It looked a little bit older. It isn't a part of the main building. This is across from the main entrance beside their track, beside the high school track. I just liked how the walls were built. Yeah, they weren't standard bricks, and they seemed to be a little odd cut. It reminded me of something older. Nothing really special about it. There's a newer building, a newer structure built on top of that wall. Other than that, I really don't know what it could be.
Okay. Well, let's take a look at the pictures you took around the building, because you took, wow.
Yeah, so it looks, this one's different, right? It looks like the window frames might be a little newer, that they were replaced at one point, because that looks like more like cement, modern cement than anything. But the different sized stones really stuck out to me. I think in this picture, I was probably taking a picture of that cross up on the top center left. I didn't know what that could mean, but it's a symbol that we see over and over again in different architecture.
A bit more of the same.
Yeah.
Again, you had the ground level windows going here.
Yeah.
And that comes up quite a bit when looking at the older architecture.
Sure, and actually, yeah, you can even see the different masonry above the windows there. It's different than what's above it on the second and third floors.
Totally. The front entrance, I guess.
That was the original main entrance, and I thought that was really neat. The center tower, the central tower there with the four spires. And then it's got the copper roof. Again, there was no way of me knowing how old this building could be. But it does, to me, look older than many of the buildings much older than the 1900s anyway, but it's kind of got that castle appearance, in my opinion.
And I think we'll get to some better pictures of it, but the towers kind of have a darker color to it. But I do think we're going to hit some closer up examples of that.
And I was taking a picture of that small slit window there underneath the staircase. That stuck out to me. I wasn't sure what that was about.
And I'm not as up on some of the technical aspects of the architecture, but in some other videos that researchers have done, I've heard the word slot antenna, for the rectangular windows, that it was serving some kind of function that way on the building, but I don't know enough about that to really go into it. It's just one explanation for why it may be like that, and more of the same. Yeah, that's kind of weird. Anything about the crest that you noticed?
Just the native person on the left, and I don't know if there's anything that sticks out about that. It looks like it does look different from the rest of the brick though. Like it could have been placed there at a later time, possibly.
Very well could have been, because like I said, it doesn't match the stonework at all.
No,
it's like an afterthought.
Yeah, it does look like a smoother type cement or something, like on the perimeter there and around the two figures. See, whereas that plaque up in the center there looks a little bit older. It looks, I don't know, but then you got the intricate design there with the grapes and the leaves below that. Interesting stuff.
Mm-hmm. The shapes of the windows also.
Mm-hmm. Actually, yeah, that one in the center looks like it's been blocked in at some point. I never noticed that before.
Mm-hmm. And that's something I've noticed with a lot of the older architecture, is that it's like they're windows, but they're not windows.
Yeah.
Looks like what's supposed to be a window. So if there's another function besides it being a window, it is hard to say what it would have been. Gargoyles.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Again, it's very intricate. The one on the right, to me, kind of looks like a dragon. In the center there, maybe, I don't know, kind of looks like a cloud. I get the idea of wind, someone blowing wind.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the left, I don't know, is that a troll or a demon, or it's all very strange.
Looks
again,
like it.
Again, on the right there, on that right turret or whatever that is, the brick is turning black again. I'm not sure what that is.
And more of the guys there.
Yeah.
The gang.
An owl on the left. I'm not sure what is center left. I don't know. It's hard to say, but is that maybe a griffin there on the far right? I'm not sure.
Interesting. I'm going to have to look up some stuff on these gargoyle kinds of decorations and find out what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
More about the front.
Yeah. So this is the south side of the building. So this would have been the newer addition in 1951. Again, you see the more modern bricks on the two far sides there, right and left in the background. And even, I don't know, the staircase there, it matches the brick that we were just looking at on the front side of the building, but they don't have any of that coloration, the black. It just seems different and out of place from the rest of the building. And of course, again, it was built, it was a newer addition.
Yeah, it's interesting because I really wasn't paying attention too much when I was putting this together, but seeing the contrast of the old stonework and the bricks is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that's striking my attention right at the moment looks Egyptian to me, like an upside down papyrus.
Okay.
And had I thought about it had I noticed it when I put it together, I would have a picture of that to show you why that's coming to mind. But it definitely has to me, an Egyptian looking appearance.
And I didn't think to get a closer picture of that plaque on that box there on the platform. I'm not sure what that says, but maybe that was part of the original building from the roof.
Interesting. And then you've got solar panels over here. Is that what that is?
Oh, that's if you see that, that's a public bike share right there. So that's just for that, the bikes.
I haven't seen those where I live.
No, okay.
Not like that.
They're all over the city, right? So that's going to run the cash box to pay for your bicycle. They're community bikes.
Okay, cool. 1951.
Mhm.
I mean, compared with the quality of the brickwork, it just looks like, again, like an afterthought or something.
Right, right. So this is the back side of the building. Again, you can see the difference, the contrast between the new addition and the older building.
What's this over here? Is that part of the building or is it separate from it?
It is part of the building, and it's some sort of incinerator smokestack, I would guess. Maybe it's for their boiler system. I have no idea, but that is part of the original structure too. You can tell by the brickwork.
It's a beautiful building.
It is a beautiful building, and there's a lot of high schools like this in Toronto, actually.
So there's that cross again.
Yeah. So I don't know. I kind of thought of a Knights Templar or something like that. I'm not sure what the meaning is.
There it is. Yeah. So I think I remember you asking the question with this particular series about the darker brick up here, maybe being from ash or something like that, possibly.
Possibly. I don't know if it's for their boiler system or I really don't know. It was interesting though.
Mhm. And it's so big. I mean, when you look at the comparison with the dumpsters down here,
Yeah.
that thing's massive. And more of the building.
Yeah, it's the back side of the building, facing east.
Ground level windows,
Possible
below ground level, below ground
Actually-
level windows.
Yeah.
So why do you want something that the rain can get in or the elements?
Sure.
And you have some other examples of things like this as we go through.
Of below level windows like this door here even. That's I don't know. That's obviously a roll up door, and it is below ground.
The loading dock.
The loading dock.
So what is it about this?
I don't know, and it's not wide enough for like a semi trailer or anything like that. But I guess
Unload from the top and roll it down. Makes sense, right?
it's strange.
Okay.
Oh.
So there's some interesting things as we go on this walk with Jim. And one of them is the number of Ukrainian Catholic churches in Toronto. And this is just like 3 of them on this map, but there's like 7 or 8 little balloons that pop up. So a lot of Ukrainian Catholics in Toronto. And what we're going to look at is the Ukrainian Catholic Church of the Holy Protection of the Mother of God. And I really couldn't find anything on the construction of the building when I looked. So this is what I put for it.
Thought that was an interesting date, 988 to 1988. 1,000 years difference there. It's kind of, I don't know what it means, but
Mm-hmm. And then you've got something else here with a date. Again, it looks different from the brickwork around it. Beautiful decoration. So they're
Yes.
telling us the name of it and the year that it was supposed to have been built.
yes. So a more modern building, from according to the date built. That was a solid copper door, I believe.
Copper door
It was
Okay.
definitely steel. It looks copper, except it's turning green.
and some stained glass going on there.
Yeah. I really didn't suspect this building to be too old. Personally, I just really liked the design of this building. I just like how it looked. Now it did have the 4 towers on each corner, and then the central tower in the middle there, all with the dome roof, and then the cross in the center. It does fit. I thought it fit some of the design of some of the buildings you've been looking at that might fit the Tartarian template, but I suspect that it's probably more modern, but it was still interesting nonetheless.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that comes up with a lot of this is, was it built or was it refurbished or restored at the time that was given? And there are a lot of old world characteristics with the onion domes and so forth on the top. So it's out there as a question in terms of what they tell us about when something was built and when it was actually built. And
Sure.
you have a couple of pictures of the beautiful building here.
Like we were talking about, there are some ideas that maybe the older civilization was pulling energy from the atmosphere somehow, and that the dome and the octagon shape of even those towers all has something to do with pulling that, harnessing that power. And then the copper and the gold too are conductors, right? So I just thought it was interesting.
And that's the direction of my research, is going more and more in that direction. It just seems to be coming out more into the collective right now about the functions of these domes and spires, and of cathedrals and so forth, as having the function of drawing down cosmic energy. And I'm working on something right now that's going to be tying some other things together with that. So I think it's very valid, and it's just interesting, the functionality of this architecture as well as the beauty of it.
I guess one other thing that might be interesting about this is this is right near Christie Pitts Park. In Christie Pitts Park, there used to be a creek running through there, Garrison Creek, and it was covered over with it was bricked over and forced underground sometime in the 1800s. And so yeah, they just have markers all over the place in Toronto where Garrison Creek is located underground, and it is close to this building. So usually water or canal systems are always tied in with some of your research. So I just would point that out too.
And I've been hearing about other underground rivers as well. I've done research recently on some of them in London, and then a few others that I know of in the States. I went to college in Baltimore, Maryland.
Yep.
And I was shocked to find out that the Jones Falls Expressway was actually built on top of the Jones Falls I was attending school there between 86 and 89. And at the time, I'm trying to figure why would they do that?
Yeah.
So I guess there was a reason in the bigger picture for wanting to obfuscate these rivers and streams and their connections with everything. And I think it goes back to the planetary grid system and generation of free energy from this system, which I think was powering everything. So the Bloor Street United Church,
yes.
And what I thought was really interesting was the number of united churches of Canada within 3 blocks of each other.
Yeah, I see that now. Yes.
You've got the Bathurst Street United Church, you've got the Bloor Street right in the middle, and then so I got the Church of the Redeemer, but I'm thinking there's another United Church of Canada right on Bloor Street here, close together. So this is between the Spadina and St. George subway stations.
Yep.
Here. And it was said to have opened in 1890 to serve the growing population of northern Toronto at the time. In 1927, a portion of the church was demolished to widen Bloor Street, and that in 1954, a fire broke out and badly damaged the church, and most of the sanctuary was destroyed. So that's another common story with these beautiful old buildings.
Yes.
Is that they were destroyed in some fashion, sometimes completely and sometimes partially.
Regardless, this building still looks much older to me than they claim. So there was a couple churches on Bloor Street. I think I might have took pictures of both of those United churches you were speaking of, and it's the coloration of the rocks. Like I didn't have the masonry work now. It's all turning black, and at first I thought it could be like maybe it's soot from 100 years of history or whatever. But I don't know. It was just very interesting to me. Very, very Gothic, very castle looking. Beautiful building.
Yep, beautiful windows there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a black lichen.
Is that what it is?
Black lichen, possibly. And
Okay.
lichen takes a long time to grow, from what I understand. And it does look a lot like the technical school, the Central Technical School.
I was just thinking that even with those 4 spires there behind the center right there. Okay, this is across the street. This picture. It's part of the University of Toronto. I'm not sure of the building name, but evidence of mud flood, possible evidence. Yeah, this is back to the church. Yeah.
Over here.
Yeah, absolutely.
How far does that building go down?
I do not know.
Or where does it stop, and how much further does it go down?
Right, and it is close to the subway system, so I don't know how far down it goes.
Just absolutely gorgeous for 1890.
Mm-hmm.
Well before motorized vehicles.
Yep. Yeah. At a time when I'm imagining like shanty towns and just wooden buildings and things like this.
So you've got a slant going on here, which is another mud flood indicator. It's an uneven street. And then, these beautiful cathedral windows that I think are serving a purpose. I think this would be a better example of a slot antenna that I was talking about. But that was what I was thinking of, as I've seen references to that, making me want to know a lot more about the science behind all of this infrastructure.
Again, that kind of looks like that tower at the collegiate school. The four spires there on the central tower. It's pretty interesting.
Okay, York Club, private social club that was incorporated in 1909. And the building that we're looking at has construction dates given of 1889 to 1892 for George Goodersham Sr. And he was president of the Goodersham and Worts Distillery, one of the largest distillers in Canada at one time. And we were talking a little bit before we started about alcohol and other distractions. And these distilleries and breweries were popping up all over the place during that time. It was a big business. And obviously they were getting quite wealthy off of it. So just to point that out, this is not an unusual business to be in during this time frame. And I think they were trying to crank out as much addictive substances for people to get high on or get knocked out of what's really going on, and making a lot of money in the process.
Sure, if they were repopulating this part of the world back in that time, then what better way to distract people from what's going on around them?
Mm-hmm. In large supply, and not just in Canada, but in other parts of the world as well.
Yeah, this was a beautiful building. I don't know if that's red sandstone.
Yeah,
I thought it was gorgeous.
It really is. So this was supposed to be built as a private residence.
Okay.
And now it's a private social club.
Yes.
Right. Exclusive to be able to go in there.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
And amazing stonework there.
Absolutely. I don't see that anywhere nowadays. Which is why I kind of thought maybe this could be related to the global civilization or the occupants who were here before, well, modern Canadians, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it predates when we're told that it was built. I mean, and we can't even build like this today.
No, absolutely not.
Particle board and plywood.
Right.
And they put them up fast.
That's so intricate.
Put siding on and you have a business.
Right.
They tear these down.
They tear these down and then they
more often than not.
And then they call for the lowest bidder to build something new.
That's definitely what I'm seeing. Check that out.
Mm-hmm. The lions and yeah.
Oh, what's going on with that?
Something I'm learning about in other videos is that these pillars, and this isn't a good example, but they have to do with like that swirling design has to do with the flow of electricity. So a lot of times at the top of a pillar, you'll see the two curls, and that has to do with like the flow of electricity. And I'm not a researcher. I'm just very interested in the subject. So,
and you'd have to wonder why somebody would take the time to do that kind of ornate and detailed work. I mean, It looks like it would be very time consuming to add those details if there wasn't any reason for it.
Sure.
That's the first thought that comes to the top of my head is why. So having a functional purpose makes a lot of sense. The Royal Conservatory of Music on Bloor Street, it didn't have a construction date. It opened in 1886.
Very interesting.
Or it opened in 1887 and was founded in 1886. And I looked to see if there was another supposed building in 1886, but this is the one that they're pointing to, which is 273 Bloor Street.
Okay.
Another wowzer.
Yeah. It just stuck out to me as odd compared to other buildings around it. I think you too have examples of other music conservatories that look similar to this building, a same design. I've seen it before in one of your videos.
The Cincinnati Music Hall is pretty mind-blowing in its appearance, just very ornate. So, another great example of that.
Okay.
I would imagine there's something super special about these music buildings with regards to acoustics and things like that going on the inside. And mud flood evidence here. You see the slope going up, the ground level windows.
And interesting enough, on the left side, on the east side of this building would be the Royal Ontario Museum, which I didn't get any pictures of. And on the right side, on the west side of this building, is the University of Toronto's track and their football field, their varsity stadium.
I think I saw that when I was looking at Google Earth. And I really think those ellipses, those tracks were like elliptical antenna. And I'm working on fleshing out my ideas about that. But I find I don't look at racetracks and tracks the same way anymore.
Yes.
There tends to be a relationship going on geometrically in the environment with other infrastructure like airports. And, they're always close by and in like a 45-degree angle from the airport. So northeast, southeast, southwest, and northwest. But it's like this pattern that's everywhere. It's not limited to country. It's around the world. And so I'm thinking that they also served a function on the grid system, the ellipses. The Victoria University of Toronto Faculty of Law on Queen's Park was officially opened in 1889. And it had a little bit of an interesting story going on with the rivalry with another institution. But that in 1958, the Law Society began to give credit to graduates of the law school seeking admission to the Ontario Bar, and that it's one of the most selective law schools in Canada and in North America. With that distinct castle-like appearance that we've been talking about.
Yes, very beautiful building. I found this one quite by surprise. Actually, I was walking through the University of Toronto campus, and it's a huge campus. Many more buildings I could have taken pictures of, but I did. I really like this building because of the castle appearance to it. Beautiful. There's some more of that intricate artwork in the masonry as well. I don't know if I got any pictures of that for you.
Let's see what we got here. There you go. Down here.
Yes.
Like that.
Yeah. And then in the top center there
and
as
then
well.
In the windows, looks like on the stone, but just beautiful additions with the decorations and things like that. And it's beautiful work.
And the red masonry there on the bottom half of the building, those are quite large blocks.
Down here?
Yes.
When you say large, does it look like they're like one large stone, or?
No, I just mean they're
sections?
much larger than like the standard brick that we've been seeing, or the standard the masonry we have been seeing. Even what's above it there, I just meant large.
So is that part of the Faculty of Law as well?
Okay, so this is the Faculty of Law building here. I'm pretty sure the building we were looking at before, I think was something else, and I think that was actually part of the Catholic school involved with the University of Toronto.
Okay.
This is the Faculty of Law building for certain. I remember this building. Just had that Roman Greco style architecture with all the columns and the triangular piece at top. Did
you get a feel for what the columns are made out of?
No, I didn't get any closer to the building than that.
But they're huge.
They are. Yeah,
which is typical.
Yes, if that door is a standard door at 7 or 8 feet, then those are almost triple that size. So
the Stewart Building is next, and it's the home of the Toronto Athletic Club, housing the first indoor swimming pool in Toronto, and said to have been built in 1894 and designed by Toronto architect Edward James Lennox, and his name comes up again with another building that we're going to see.
Yeah, so it's a pretty big building. Again, I'm not any type of researcher. I just thought it was interesting. It stood out to me. It has a lot of that column work or the pillars there, especially in that turret there on the top left. It's got the raised staircase going into the main entrance. So I'm not sure what significance that is. It was a pretty building.
Another masterpiece.
Mm-hmm.
You see it from a different angle and proudly identified here.
Yeah.
And when I think athletic club, I don't think of a building that looks like that.
I'm not sure if there's evidence of mud flood there on the bottom.
Yeah.
So those large foundation blocks there in the front.
What's this going on here with these doors? That's weird.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've been closed off.
Yeah. It keeps going on and on.
It does. It's a big building. Again, it just stuck out to me. It's got skyscrapers or tall towers on either side, and it's just kind of sitting there.
So you had a number of buildings on, is it Yonge Street?
Yonge
Street, a major artery in Toronto that connects the shores of Lake Ontario with the shores of Lake Simcoe, which is a gateway to the Upper Great Lakes, and was said to have been integral to the planning and settlement of Western Upper Canada starting in the 1790s, and for quite a while was known as Main Street, Ontario.
I think they take claim to being the longest street in the world.
That's what I saw, and then there was some reason that it wasn't anymore.
Oh, okay.
But at one time. And I think you mentioned where that one is like barely there.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
And I think there might have been some other examples like that where there's just a hint of the number. And then you've got your 8, 6, 7 that are standing out, and there's a lot of people questioning whether or not 1,000 years was added to the actual year.
The actual timeline, yeah.
The actual timeline. So there's some really good examples out there that, like this, that seem to support that idea.
And it's this building and then it's these two buildings together that made me reach out to you, because it's these two buildings in particular that were like, wow, these might be something Michelle is interested in. They have that Roman Greco look. They're very old. They're very intricate. The artwork is very intricate. I'm surprised they're still standing.
Is it this one?
Yes. So
Yeah,
that's
I mean-
Canadian Bank of Commerce. Yeah.
Yeah. And we don't even question it until we start to see differently.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, why would they lie to us? But when you look at it, it's, wait a minute, how'd they build
Yeah.
that?
Yep.
And it
And
looks
that's,
right out of Rome or Greece.
yeah, it does. And then like they've saved the building, and there's a high-rise tower right behind that. Yeah, I'm surprised it's still standing. But there's what I was talking about just a few minutes ago with the pillars, and then the top of the pillars there, they had the swirl.
Hmm.
So a video I watched recently suggests that maybe these were power generators of some sort with the dome, and that the pillars and the artwork at the top kind of just dictate the flow of energy, how it coils around or something to that effect.
And that makes a lot of sense to me. And that seems to be where the collective research is heading, to bring that forward and say, this isn't just another pretty building. There's more going on here. And this one, I'm imagining this is probably a bank as well, because a lot of these buildings ended up as banks, but it
Yes.
looks like it's fenced off.
Yeah, so some sort of construction has been going on. It's not in use, I know that at this moment. In between the two center columns there at the top, it looks like there might have been some sort of signage there at some point.
But it's blank now.
It's blank now.
No identity. McDonald's. Wow. Makes me want to go to McDonald's.
I think it was a Starbucks 2 years ago.
Any idea what it started out as?
No, again, I'm just a tourist in the city. I
Mhm.
was walking by, and it just stuck out as something older, with the large masonry on the bottom, the larger bricks. And
Yeah, remember the same thing when I was stationed in the army in Augsburg, Germany, and going into the McDonald's there. Same idea. Beautiful old building.
yeah, it's gorgeous, right?
And that's another great example of the year on the McDonald's building.
I think that's why I probably took a picture of this building too, is like, look at the date. It says 1905, but where's the one? It was there. There's evidence there was a one there, or they
So-
tried to add one, or
And you can't really tell on that one, but right up there at the top, where's the one? Did it wash off?
905. I don't, very strange.
So this is the old city hall on Queen Street West, and the home of the city council from 1899 to 1966.
Yep.
And it was said to have been started in 1889 and finished in 1898, and that there was some kind of tiff between the architect and the city council, and they refused him a plaque, so he had his stonemason sign his name beneath the upper eaves around the entire building, is what the story is. So supposedly his names appear somewhere, and that's to me, it's a lot easier to engrave your name in stone or put a plaque up than actually build something like this. And I
Sure.
really think that's what we're looking at for these old buildings.
Sure.
They're taking credit for it. They're giving it a reason for its existence, how it got here.
Right.
And, again, we don't question it for
Like
the most part.
early Europeans arriving here, like, did they really take the time to build these magnificent buildings? This is almost on par with the Canadian Parliament building in Ottawa. It's kind of a similar design, I think.
With another story that goes along with it.
Mhm.
Built at an earlier time, I think, because I think Ottawa was selected as the capital of Canada in 1857. So sometime within a few years after that is the story that we're told about it. Again, wow.
Another massive building, yeah. Large masonry, intricate design in the brickwork.
The clock towers are everywhere with these old buildings. The series of 3 windows and 2 windows is typical. The way this tower is here with the 3 windows on each face showing here, I see that design everywhere.
And I remember you pointed that out in one of your videos I've watched.
Very common, and not just here. in North America, but all over. So it's almost like a signature design feature.
Of a global civilization, maybe.
Mhm. The ornate brickwork here
Mhm.
with the archways. Up here, you see all kinds of stuff going on with the front of the building, with the designs, almost like columns here at the windows.
Yeah.
What comes to mind. And then you've got that, that same intricate pattern here, and you can make
Mhm.
out City Hall. And again, was that an afterthought or, done when they tell us it was done? And some neat things going on with the windows here and all of these columns bunched together like that. I haven't seen that. Or if
That's
I
very
have, I
neat.
didn't pay attention to it. Okay, now we're going to move on down to part of Ontario that's by the waterfront. And I already know from past research east of here along the waterfront that there's a lot going on. And then when you focus my attention on this real estate here, I'm like, wow, there's a lot going on here. So it's a really cool tour of this part of downtown Toronto on the waterfront. And we're going to start with the Liberty Grand Entertainment Complex.
Okay.
And it's one of Toronto's few heritage complexes, a world-class event venue with 3 grand ballrooms, crystal chandeliers, iron lace balconies, 30-foot ceilings, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Ontario. And said to have been built in 1926 to provide exhibit space for the government of Ontario during the annual Canadian Annual Exhibition. And then after a while, it wasn't used for a while, and it was leased by the city council to the Liberty Entertainment Group to host private events. And this whole area down here is really amazing. So it's like, wow.
Yeah. So I don't even know. Yeah, it this stuck out to me. The center dome and then the turrets on each corner of the building. Just thought it was a pretty building.
The sun
Yep.
depiction looks like the sun, and then you've got the same thing going on up there at the top.
Yep.
And then we'll go into some other pictures, but the huge doors.
Yep. They're huge steel doors. I know they slide open. I was there last week and they happened to be filming something there and the door was open. So they slide open.
There it is.
Yeah.
That's the picture with the doors open. You said there was a film truck or something there.
Yeah, there was a bunch of film trucks there and then the huge lighting rigs. So I'm not sure what they were doing, filming a movie or.
So another point I want to make before I go on is this is the location of the Canadian National Exhibition. Is it all through here?
Yeah, the CNE Ontario Place is just beside it and across the water on those artificial islands. It's a huge complex.
If you go to the Liberty Grand website, this is what comes up. And there's 2 things I want to point out. This is one of them where you see the CN Tower and it looks like there's like a straight line. And then this is the other one where you see the sun coming through this little aperture at the top of the dome.
Yeah.
And one thing that I found is that the builders of this civilization were very precise with the infrastructure lining up with each other. And so again, that's the first thing that came to mind when I saw that.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think that's random or a quirk. I think that there's more to it than that. So, and then this is where you saw the door underneath the grating here.
Yeah, so this was on Ronsonvale Ave and Howard Park, Ronsonvale Drive, Ronsonvale Ave and Howard Park Ave. It was another bank building, and you can't see the door, but that is a full-size door underneath ground level below the sidewalk. So I just thought that was odd. And then the red brick on the bottom level. I just thought it could have been possible evidence of mud flood.
So this is the door on this side?
No, that's the brick underneath the sidewalk.
Okay, got it. And then
so,
on this side.
Yeah, so like at the top of this picture on the right is the door. I couldn't actually get a decent picture of the door.
Cool.
But it's a full-size door that you or I could have walked through. 6 feet tall, probably.
So we've got Medieval Times and the Toronto Sports Club. And the buildings are right next to each other. And also the Liberty Grand Entertainment Complex which is actually a triangle when you look at it from above.
Yes.
And we're going to see the Dufferin Arch, which is right here in just a moment. The architecture looks very similar between these two buildings here, and that's the Dufferin Arch. And so you're seeing, you know, a pretty nice view here of the medieval times and tournament. Nice evening out venue, it sounds like.
Yes.
And the medieval times dinner and tournament building here, where you've got the, it looks like Antiquitech on top with the rod.
Yeah.
And the old towers and the glass plating of the dome.
Yeah. Just thought it was very neat.
There's another view of it. Oh, no, that's the Toronto Sports Club, which is
It is.
across the street from it and looks just like it.
And I can't remember the name of that building. It's the Toronto Sports Club that's taken it over, but it was a grand something.
You know, again, when I think of sports club, like the Stewart Building, I don't think of a building that looks like that.
With the many domes and the, yeah.
I would think of something like this being more like the Liberty Grand Complex than
Right.
a sports club or a medieval times dinner and tournament.
Yeah, and I didn't even notice that they both, that and the medieval times building both had the same design until I looked at it on Google Maps.
Okay, so you have Liberty Grand here,
Yeah.
medieval times here, Toronto Sports Club here, and then you've got all kinds of stuff down here.
Sure.
And so we're going to do a little tour of this area. And you have the Shrine Peace Memorial, which is here, right next to something called the Rose Garden.
Yep.
And she's standing on top of a sphere and two sphinxes, you know, Egyptian again. And then it's erected and dedicated to the cause of universal peace by the ancient
Arabic order of
the
nobles.
nobles of the Mystic Shrine for North America, dated June 12th of 1930. And when you get into this kind of thing, you're getting into the original Masons versus the Freemasons.
Okay.
And the stolen legacy of the original builders and, you know, what would be considered European Freemasonry. And I think there's definitely free has meanings beyond that, you know, that these buildings were all there for the taking after this mud flood or whatever took place. And they brought in their agenda through these Freemasons that were just there building the new historical narrative from what was originally here. And so I think this, the ancient Arabic order of the nobles of the Mystic Shrine refers to the original Masons. And I believe they were Moorish Masons. And
Moorish.
And that the word Moor goes back to Lemuria, and that it was a continuous civilization from ancient times to modern. To me, that explains a lot of what we're seeing and how we're still using this infrastructure that they claim was built in modern times. But, you know, clearly there's discrepancies in how they could have built it.
Sure.
And so I think this is a piece of the puzzle, which involves the Masons, the original Masons, and then the Masons that took the identity of the original Masons.
Okay.
And it's a secret society, right?
Yeah.
You know, one of many secret societies involved in this, but it's secret. So we don't know this. And I didn't have any opinion about Freemasonry up until about 2014, 2015, when I first started waking up to all of this. And I realized that at the upper levels, and I do mean the upper levels, I don't mean the whole Masonic orders. I mean, at the very top, the 32nd, 33rd degree Masons, which are the Shriners, that there was something not good going on with all of this. And that was my aha moment.
Yeah, and the link that I sent you for that 6-hour video, they really get into that too. That is probably the Masons that are hiding this information, and yeah. So I know nothing about it. I find it all very interesting.
I didn't either. I didn't have a clue. I didn't have any opinion. I didn't know any Masons.
Yeah.
Nothing. And then it started to come in when I started waking up to all of this, that it was, in fact, very important. And having a Moorish American friend during that time who really brought the piece about the Moors into my life. And what did it for me was going with some of my friends down to Dallas.
Yes.
We were going to see Rockwell, which is northeast of Dallas. And I had heard there was an ancient rock wall in Rockwall
Okay.
that nobody that lives in Rockwall knows about it because we tried to find it and I just got blank stares. But we stopped by Dealey Plaza, and the book depository where Oswald was supposed to have shot Kennedy was
Yes.
right next to the building where he was supposed to have been held prisoner afterwards, which was right next to the castle where Jack Ruby shot Harvey. And it was like claustrophobically close.
Really?
So if you're going to shoot the president of the United States, why would you do it in a place you can't get out of? And then I read when he was apprehended, Harvey was apprehended, he was drinking a Coke and looked really surprised, like, what? And from being there, I looked up Masonic connections to the Kennedy assassination. And that was when I started to get this other stream of information about the Freemasons.
And
And-
coincidentally, wasn't JFK, isn't he famous for giving a speech about speaking out against these secret societies?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely connections in there. They're highly ritualistic. You know, there's a lot of occult stuff going into what's taken place, not only with that, but other things as well.
Other major events of recent time, recent
You know,
day, yeah. absolutely.
dates, ritual dates, you name it.
Yep.
So
That's
that's a big part of how they were trying to keep control over all of us, was through
sure.
casting these spells and things like that. And
Yep.
thankfully with the internet and our ability to connect with each other, they've lost control of the narrative with the mainstream narrative. And, you know, people have been able to ask questions and get information in a way different than we have in the past. And I think
Sure.
that's all part of it. But I just want to make that point because, you know, when I see something like this, it just kind of underscores for me the importance of Masons in this whole story.
Sure.
Not just the original Masons, but the fake Masons. This is the third star fort now that I know of by the waterfront that you brought to my attention. The other one being Fort York.
Fort York.
And then I really think the R.C. Harris water treatment plant is a star fort.
Maybe a larger fort. This one here wasn't real big, but I thought it was really cool.
And this
so-
is a marker for it, right? On the right?
Yeah, yeah. So that's what they've left in place after they tore down the original Star Fort, I guess.
Is it an obelisk?
It's a rounded obelisk, yes. It has a pointed top.
And then what's this doing here, right?
I don't know.
You got some edges going there and you see half of it. So it's an underground there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you start following stones and it leads to interesting places. And before we started recording this, once I started noticing and following the stones is when I really started to wake up to all of this
Okay.
and the field research that came along with it. You know, and I'd see stones somewhere in Oklahoma and I would like drive in there and I would find mounds and, you know, earthworks and all kinds of things going on. And that was part of my waking up to all of this. It's very
Now-
powerful.
Now this one here, I was just out for a walk. I wasn't really looking for anything, and this is why I started taking pictures in this area at all in the first place, because I found this star fort. I thought, wow, that's really neat. This is, you know, I was kind of interested in the star fort idea, and I found this. I just thought it was really cool, so I took a picture of this, and then I started noticing the buildings around me. This isn't the first time I got to stand in the star fort, because I have been to the Citadel in Halifax.
Mhm.
But I didn't know that that was a star fort until recently. I had no idea, but it's a pretty cool place as well. So I've now been in 2 star forts.
The same thing for me. I lived in Nova Scotia part-time, long story, for a
Okay.
couple of years, but I've been there too. And it was years before I woke up to all of this.
Yeah,
And there's a bunch of star forts in Nova Scotia too.
yeah,
They're up there all over.
yeah. And this is really strange. Like, I never even heard of star forts until the last couple of years, but they seem to be everywhere. And why didn't I learn about this in school? Why didn't we learn about these in school?
You know, and it's a really good gateway topic for the ancient civilization. And I first heard about star forts from Sylvie and her New Earth
Mhm.
channel. I was watching her video on star forts in November and December of 2015. And it was like the information I needed at the time. I hadn't heard of them before. And I was starting to do my own research around where I was living in Oklahoma. And then I started seeing star forts in that configuration shortly after that. So it was something I learned about at the right time. and it helped me start to put all of this stuff together. This is interesting because I was looking at Google Earth and I'm like, Jim, I'm looking at Google Earth and I'm seeing this wind turbine. Jim, can you get a picture of the wind turbine for me?
Yeah.
What's that doing there? So if you'll touch base on it for a second and then I'll follow up.
So yeah, like I seen it when I was down there. I didn't think it really meant anything. It was one lone wind turbine, and it's directly beside the old Star Fort, Fort Ruiz. And yeah, I remember I got the email from you, Jim. Can you? I need more pictures of that and Liberty Grant and the archway. So yeah, I come back down, and I just know that you've talked about old energy lines.
Supposedly the first urban wind turbine in North America.
Yeah.
And apparently the only wind turbine, from what you said, in Toronto.
In the city.
In the city.
Yeah.
You know, so what's like one wind turbine there? What good is it? No, I was just going to say it. I mean, I've long believed that these aren't actually wind turbines.
Yep.
That's what they're called, but they are harvesting some kind of energy, but not necessarily the wind. And there's lines of them as far as you can see in Oklahoma, in West Texas. And all of the wind turbines are like going at the same speed, whether the wind is blowing or not, unless it's turned off. And so it's just like this ballet of these turbines moving at the same speed, and they're all lined up in a particular configuration. And I think it's a cover for some other kind of energy. And I think the energy is related to ancient technology of some kind and the Earth's grid lines.
So maybe they're laying on a ley line or something like this, playing magnetic energy somehow.
Exactly. And I've seen this at Turner Falls in Oklahoma, which is south of
Yep.
Oklahoma City. There's a wind turbine at the falls, and it's like on top of it somewhere, you know, and it just, you know, really messes up the skyline, right?
Yeah.
You're supposed to be at this beautiful natural place, and there's a wind turbine there. So when I saw the lonely wind turbine, that was kind of what jumped to my mind.
The one
what's
thing
that doing there?
The one thing I did notice about the turbine is that when I'm looking down Dufferin through the archway, the turbine is about dead center of that archway. And then at the other end of the park on the east end is the Princess Gate archway. And again, the same thing, looking west through there, this turbine is dead center with that alignment.
So this is Ontario Place, right?
Yep.
Just across from where we were just looking at.
Yep.
And
all artificial islands.
Artificial islands and some interesting things going on here. These domes, here's a full, some kind of like a geodesic dome or something. And then there's like a half one over here. And we'll see it in another picture, but it looks like there's a cluster of observatories here of some kind. And you see it a little bit in this picture here.
So those are actually silos. That's like a grain silo. I'm not sure what they are, but yeah, it's more like a grain silo, I think. I actually walked around there one day.
Okay. I saw the tops of that and reminded me of some astronomical observatories that I've seen.
And then the green roofs you see are like a barn or something.
And then you've got the evidence for the artificial island here, where you've got this stone embankment.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you look back here, you see the artificial edges here with the harbor.
Yeah.
And again, that's something I see all over the place. And there's just a few other places here. The Humber River.
Yeah. It's an ancient Native American travel path, the Humber River. There's a plaque talking about that. The only reason I took a picture of it is because to the left of this photo, like it's not on the photo, is a mound and earthworks. And so I just thought that was interesting. Yeah.
This one here, and then you've got a big stone up here.
Yeah, three massive boulders on the top, not marked, but just kind of standing there on the top of the mound. In my head, I thought burial ground for a giant, but right, I have no idea.
Those big stones are like a calling card, and I think they're the the beings behind this don't draw any attention to it. We just walk by the big megalithic stones, like you find in Peru and other countries, not supposed to be here. So we don't think it's out of the ordinary. And, like this one here, you can see it's like massive.
Oh, it was massive. It was huge, way bigger than a man. I couldn't guess weight, but it was humongous and not marked, not engraved in any way, just standing there.
Yeah, it's good example. Is that Casa Loma?
Casa Loma. Yeah.
Yeah, I've done a little bit of research on that place.
Yeah.
Wasn't sure where that one was.
Okay, so this is across the street from Varsity Field, again near the Royal Ontario Museum, near the music building, and then across the street is the Gentlemen's Club that we saw pictures of. So it's all in the same general area.
So the York Club is across the street.
Yes, that's right. So this is on the south side of Bloor.
You've got the 3 windows, the 2 windows. I've seen that design of circular tower before.
Yeah.
In different places.
At one time, there might have been a dome. It's hard to say. On top of that.
They just deconstruct them, so very possible.
Mm-hmm.
Nice doorway there.
Yeah. The Munich School of Global Affairs is the name of the building now.
Is that the one we saw earlier, or is that at the one we're looking at now?
I'm not sure. I think that might be another building.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Well, you can see the one a little bit better there, but it's still not as emphasized. How about that one?
Okay, so that's one of the other United Churches we talked about. See, it's on Bloor Street. That's the one closer to Bathurst.
Mm-hmm. So
again, just a neat looking building. When I saw the black coming out on the black coloring coming out on the brickwork, in my head, I put that to the age of the building. Maybe it was much older than they say because of the discoloration, but
lots of good examples of that.
Hyde Park, again, this is on the west end of Bloor, Toronto's biggest recreational park. It's got a lot of old growth forest within it. There's this creek running through this little stream, and it runs into Grenadier Pond. I saw that masonry there, the old brick walls, and I thought of you. So I don't know what it means. I don't know the significance. I mean,
does nature do that? That's what they want us to believe, and you've got more here, and you've got, like straight edges going in the stonework.
Yeah, so this wall, I was standing on this wall, and that one was a little bit taller. That was probably maybe a 5 or 6 foot drop there. And the picture before, I was looking across, and that was only, 2 bricks high. So it's just giving you another example of what I was looking at.
And to me, this is very ancient masonry, long time ago.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I was thinking. I've seen almost all of your videos. And so when I saw this, it just, certain things I just think of Michelle. Okay, Michelle might like this.
And this was part of my journey when I first started waking up to this. And I literally walked outside of my front door in an apartment in Oklahoma City. Mm-hmm. And I noticed stones like that just outside my apartment.
Yep.
And then I just went around a big block and I saw massive megalithic stones in front of the convenience store, in front of Starbucks, in front of the hospital.
Yeah.
Just lying around. And that was the beginning of starting to tune into what was actually there instead of driving by, not even seeing it.
Well, that's the thing. I wanted to go outside for a walk, and I was just doing a nature walk. I like being in nature, so I just wanted to walk through the forest. There's not much forest in Toronto. Hyde Park is a great place for that. And then I found this quite by accident. I wasn't looking for it. I didn't want to see it, but there it was.
Yeah, it's like that.
And it does. It looks so old, doesn't it? Like there's just a lot of layer of dirt on top of it, and
yeah, I mean, we're not told about this civilization, so it doesn't register that there's anything to ask questions about. You can see it.
Yeah, and
here. And then another thing, just real quick, I want to point out with this leaning tree. First started tuning into this in Oklahoma as well, is that when there's like a vortex coming up from the water, the trees have a tendency to bend towards the energy of the vortex.
Okay, that's why I took a picture of that tree, just to give an example. Like, well, look how big that tree is, and it's growing on top of that brick wall. So I mean, to me that meant age, right? It meant it was very old. So the Princess Gate, yeah,
Princess
Princess
Gate.
Gate Archway.
So
And it looks like a lot of the old world exhibitions, the archways to many of them.
I found the Princess Gate when I was doing research on Toronto a little while ago, not too long ago. And I was around the Queen's York Rangers building, which is just around the corner from here.
Okay.
And so I was looking at that, and then I was on Google Earth and I saw this. I'm like, what is that doing there? So that was how it came to my attention that this is the entranceway to the Canadian National Exhibition.
Yeah.
I would say highly anomalous. You know, the Arc de Triomphe in Paris and the Marble Arch in London.
Like I seen an archway just last night for the Chicago World Fair back in the 1800s. I don't know if you can zoom in on that picture. You can see the windmills directly center through that archway in the background.
Yeah, I mean, there's some really interesting relationships
Wow.
going on here, and the story that they tell about it again just doesn't really add up. Everything is clustered together in the downtown area, pretty much right next to each other. This area is in between.
And it looks like all old world architecture, like all in one area.
We've been looking at this place.
Yep.
And the Princess Gate is over here somewhere, right?
Yep.
Is
Probably
this
right
it?
behind. Yeah, I think that would probably be it right about there.
And then the Canadian National Exhibition is in this area here.
Is basically all this area, all this waterfront.
And then over here you get into the Queen's York Rangers building, like an armory of some kind. And then next to that is Fort York.
Yep.
And then the further down the waterfront you go, you get to the sports stadiums, the CN Tower, the rail yards.
Yep.
And you know, so there's just a lot of stuff going on down here.
And even right here on this property is the Toronto soccer, the professional soccer stadium is right there, dead center.
I don't think it's by accident or random.
No.
I think there's some kind of performance enhancement of this original grid system with these stadiums and things like that. You know, and when you think about the amount of money in professional sports, and
yeah,
I just think they're benefiting from whatever positive enhancement the grid system has for athletics.
Maybe not the Toronto Maple Leafs. We've been waiting for them to win a Stanley Cup for a long time.
And it's not just in Toronto. I mean, I find the same thing in other cities. It's like everything's like, I can find it now by just looking at it, knowing what to look for. It is exciting. I mean, when you start doing the kind of research that you're doing with taking photographs, it's addictive. There's that word. It's my addiction.
Mine was walking. I just enjoy going out for the walks, and then I started to see some things, and I don't know, things that were interesting to me. They seemed old. They seemed out of place. They seemed like they might fit your theories, and I just wanted to help. I never ever wanted to make a video. I just wanted to be of help. That was my part in this whole thing, was just to give assistance any way I could. It's cool.
And you know, don't stop. I mean, send me, you know, more pictures, and then when you get home to London, send me pictures from there. And you know, the more you look, the more you find, and that's been my experience.
London's interesting too. Like, do you know anything about like in London? I know they heat all their buildings by steam, and underground pressurized steam. Do you know anything about that?
I don't.
No, neither do I.
You know, if you want to take pictures of that, and I'll look into it. That sounds very interesting.
Yeah, strange. It's a low cost way of heating high rise buildings or towers, I guess, to bring in high pressure steam.
I mean, I think there's a lot of technologies like that were probably existing for a long time, and then they just, you know, brought in technologies where they can make money and control access and things like that. You know, the pavement lights, prism lights, where you have multicolored lights in the ground.
Yes.
I mean, that's natural lighting. That doesn't cost anything.
Yes, that's very interesting. Did you do a video on that as well? I think you did.
I I collaborated with Stuffed Beagle. He's
Okay.
really the one that's done the research on that, and of the videos, I did the script for one of them.
Okay.
But that was his baby and his research. But it brings it out because it's the same thing with the prism lights that you have with the streetcars. Because once they got the streetcars up and running,
Yeah.
so like there was the mud flood, they had this technology. They brought in mules and horses to pull the streetcars until they could get the
Yeah.
streetcars electrified. And then as soon as they invented the car and got the gasoline
Mm,
production going, they didn't need the streetcars anymore. So they stopped the streetcars and pulled up the tracks in most places.
yep.
This transportation was everywhere. With the prism lights, we were told that they were invented in the late 19th century, and that when electricity came along, that they were obsolete and not in fashion, and so no more prism lights. And then you get, light bulbs, and I think the light bulbs existed previously also, but
Sure.
that's what they tell us, and that no more prism lights. So they're still charging for it, and somebody's making a lot of money. So a lot
Yeah,
of the control of resources.
I remember hearing in a video somewhere that there were prism lights somewhere in Toronto in the downtown core, and I wasn't able to find them, and I never thought to look for them to research where they were again. But yeah, it's a cool technology.
Definitely. And I think the bottom line is all of the architecture that we've looked at has, for the most part, a story. We're told when it was constructed, we're told who designed it, who built it, and I think that's just all a cover where whoever was responsible for creating the new narrative, whether it was the Freemasons or other secret societies involved at the same time, there was like the Knights of Pythias and the Odd Fellows were doing the same kinds of things. They were inventing the new story. And so, my advice is when anybody is looking at this stuff, just question it. Is it possible?
There were a couple massive Odd Fellow buildings in Toronto that I thought to take pictures of and never did, but yes, they definitely have a presence here as well.
Yeah. So, it's definitely, for anybody interested in doing this kind of field research, just question it, because what they tell us about our history, we don't have the technology to be able to pull this kind of construction off.
Mm-hmm.
You see pictures on the internet of these, big, beautiful buildings of heavy masonry, and you have dirt roads and horse and buggies trotting alongside these big buildings. And, it doesn't really make sense. And then kind of when you add to that, why would they go through all this trouble? And the reason for that's not a happy reason. And it's why we're in the straits that we're in today, what we're seeing play out in the world. And I do remain optimistic that what was originally planned isn't going to happen. I think there's going to be some game changers. And we're not going to see the worst case scenario. I'm not going to say it's not going to get weird.
Yeah.
or worse before it gets better.
Right.
But I am saying I have hope. And
Awesome.
I've had hope for several years now. And up to that point, I didn't.
Well,
because I was awake. I could see stuff going on. It's like, why can't anybody else see this?
yeah.
But my belief about a better future for humanity has grown and is strong. And I don't think they're going to get away with what they've done. They've tried darn hard.
And for a long time.
For centuries, to make it so we wouldn't wake up and they would get away with what they had planned.
Yeah.
And it involves power and control. It involves a new form of humanity that we're not agreeing to.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just
I was just going to say, we're not agreeing to becoming human hybrids with machines.
Absolutely not.
We're not agreeing to that.
No. Well, maybe some of us. I think I don't know about the mainstream people. Some of them are right on board with that. I think it's strange. We're living in strange days for sure. But I like your optimism. That's great. That's what we
Yeah.
need, right? Because I think all the media and mainstream entertainment is leading us to is doom and gloom. They're constantly bombarding us with just negative news stories, negative energy. It's movies are just violence and
Right.
just right. It's so they want us to be negative for some reason.
They want us to be negative.
down.
And they've kind of rigged the whole system in that direction.
Yeah,
But we're living in an exciting time.
yeah,
We've got this internet technology, and as much as they've tried to mind control everybody, they haven't been able to.
yeah.
And human beings are good. I believe
I
we're
think
good.
so.
We're good at heart.
I think so.
And part of the problem is that we can't imagine this kind of thing happening.
Right.
Evil does exist.
Yeah.
We can't change what's happened, but we can change our future by coming at it from a different angle.
Sure.
Anger is not going to solve the problem,
No.
but coming together and not giving our consent. They've
Yes.
gotten our consent because we haven't done anything. We didn't know.
That's right.
And so that's the only way they can be successful, is if we allow them.
Yeah.
And
You do
it's
say that.
and it's coming out more and more and more. And not everybody's mind controlled.
Yeah, that's right. A lot of us are waking up.
It's like,
Not
every-
everyone. I'm still the only
everybody-
person in my circle that kind of sees this stuff, but we are growing on the internet, and that's why I like this community.
yeah. Same here. I mean, there's very, very few people in my life I can talk to
Really,
on these subjects.
really,
A few, under 5, I think,
really.
that
I don't.
I know personally. But in the larger community, it's there's a real want and desire to know the truth, and a lot of sincere seekers,
Yep.
trying to put it together. A
For the
lot of really good researchers right now.
And for the majority of the people, I think it's just easier to just go with what we have, to go with the infrastructure that we have, with the stories we've been told, to just live their life, right? They're not. A lot of people aren't interested in what we're learning about, what we're discovering, what we're searching for, right? And it's, I don't know, it's. But like you said, for the most part, people are good and a little naive, maybe. They're trusting of our
Trust.
authoritative figures.
Right.
Right? They don't want to believe that maybe we've been lied to this whole time. It's easier to just anyway.
I mean, honestly, I wish I thought I was wrong. But I do this. I put the time and the energy into it because I think we're in grave danger.
Yeah.
And that's why it is important to be engaged at some level.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily having this conversation with family and friends that aren't ready for it. That's going to probably create more disharmony and pain than not saying anything.
I think the biggest thing that your videos in particular, that your information woke me up to, is that it's the whole thing about the New World Order. We're not moving into a New World Order, but we've been in it for quite a while now. That's the biggest piece of information you woke me up to. Wow, like we're not waiting for this to happen. It's here. We're in it.
Right. I'm saying in the last 200 to 300 years is when it came in. And
absolutely.
I don't think this happened thousands of years ago. I think it happened
No.
hundreds of years ago.
When they come to the New World and started to occupy it, that's probably.
And I mean, I can remember growing up. I'll be 58 in July.
Yeah.
I can remember growing up hearing about the New World Order and all the things that they said they were going to do.
Yep. Yeah.
I didn't pay any attention to it. I didn't pay any attention to biochips and
Nope.
all the stuff that is coming frighteningly close to reality. Oh, okay. So they've been telling us all along.
Yeah.
But then they don't tell us they're telling us. It's in
Yes.
movies, it's in books. I don't know how I heard about it, because I wasn't necessarily reading those books that were out in the 80s and 90s, but somewhere I picked it up.
Yeah. They've always been
And
talking about it.
and so I want to believe in the good in everybody. And I can even remember thinking about right before I really started waking up, which would have been in around 2006.
Okay.
So from 2006 forward was when I started to wake up. I had
Okay.
been aware of a lot of things prior to that.
Yeah.
But I started kind of moving into a different level with it about that time. But I still wasn't awake to certain things. And somebody that I knew started talking about conspiracy theories, and I'm like, oh, no, it's not even possible. No way.
Now that you even hijacked our term, awake, they're using it for other things now.
Exactly. And I'm like, and so that was about 15, 16 years ago. And it's been a process. I didn't start out believing that. I didn't believe everything I heard along the way of trying to get information. But it's like kind of what gelled and what didn't gel. And when I really started to understand that there's been real evil afoot here, and that we're the victims of it, and that we've been manipulated, that I started to look at it completely differently and say, okay, yeah, this is possible. But they went to a lot of trouble to bring about the conditions of the world that we're living in today, so that they could get away with it.
Sure.
But we're also moving into a different time, astrologically, going from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. There's a lot of things going on around us. I think I'm kind of walking gingerly around the idea of spirit and, helpers on the other side. And, I don't think we're alone. I don't think we're being left to fend for ourselves. I think we have help, and whatever way you feel comfortable what that help is, whether it's God, whether it's angels, whether it's ascended masters, whatever. I do believe we have help, and that we're not facing this alone.
And there is talk of like just humans evolving consciously too, or right? Maybe some of us, maybe that's what it is. Some of us are just waking up that way. We're just maybe we've taken that step. Some of us. Not to say that we're better or above, just fact. Because a lot of people can't see the things we see. They just, for whatever reason, you can show it to them, but they can't see it. Right.
Right. And I think that's a great way of putting it, at just different levels of awareness and readiness for it. And that's why I say, the person that you talk to about it really needs to be ready for it. I mean, they need to approach you and say, hey, what about this? Because so many people aren't ready just to hear it.
So many people just turn on CNN and they take that as gospel, and they can't see the actors behind that screen in that black box. I can't understand it. They can't see how just how like a news person can come on the news day after day and just spew out negativity over and over again. They can't see how that's scripted and planned. Like there's a purpose for that. It's not because they're telling you news. It's what are they really doing, right? Like I think if it was real news, they'd have better things to say. They'd have a better purpose. I can see some sort of agenda. Do I know what it is? No, not entirely, but I like to say you can't BS a BSer, right? And that's all they're spewing is BS to me.
It's propaganda.
It's all scripted. It's acting.
And television shows don't even interest me, and haven't for a long time.
I know. Yep.
The last time I watched television was a long time ago.
Yeah.
I watched it as a kid growing up.
Yeah.
And very little since I've been an adult.
Well, that's why I said at the beginning, you're kind of like a rock star to me. Because like this is the TV that I watch now, right? It's people who I think are genuinely trying to spread truthful information, or at least getting to the truth. Yeah, we're not trying to deceive people. You're not trying to deceive people, but you're trying to offer something, an alternative narrative.
You know, and at least ask questions and share what
Yeah.
I found.
Yeah.
You know, whether, you know, some of what I say, you can look it up and verify it. A lot of what I say you can't, but that's
Mhm.
why I try to bring in so many comparison examples to show you, okay, this is in China and this is in Oklahoma. You know,
Yeah.
it's like the same. And just show you how I got to where I am with what I'm saying.
Sure. Your circle alignment videos were amazing. They were
And
mind blowing.
That's how I got into all of this. I mean, when I started following these alignments and started looking at these places that I would have absolutely no reason to look at otherwise,
Right.
you know, this whole bigger picture started to come out, and it's just taken me places I would never have imagined.
Yeah. Yeah. It's more than just coincidence. It has to be, right? Like, I no longer believe in coincidence.
I don't either.
Yeah.
No, I believe in synchronicity.
That's right. I talked to you about today be my 100 days, so I mean that's a little bit of synchronicity too.
But definitely, you know, keep sending me pictures.
Okay.
And if you see anything, you know, like we were talking about the steam heating and all that kind of stuff, if you find
Sure.
any information about that, that sounds interesting.
Cool.
And
I'll do that.
you know, we'll all put this big puzzle back together again somehow.
Absolutely.
But it's definitely been a cooperative effort and a collaborative effort.
Yeah.
And you know, some of the biggest jumps that I've been able to make was when I started researching places that commenters suggested.
Yeah.
And, you know, again, places I wouldn't be looking at otherwise. And, you know, that brought in even more information. And, you know, it's there to be found. And, you know, the main thing is just don't accept blindly what you're told. That's how we've gotten here.
And I'm even learning too, like just a standard brick building. Like bricks aren't a new technology; they're very, very old, right? So I mean, even some of the less, even some of the just like more bland buildings could be older than I think, older than we think. There was more examples of buildings in Toronto that have a lot of basement level businesses with a staircase going down from the sidewalk, which could be possible evidence of mudslide. It's very strange.
And keep checking out rivers and
Yeah.
waterfalls.
Okay.
Because there's information there as well.
Yeah, I'm right near the Niagara Escarpment, where Niagara Falls falls from. So I mean, yeah, I can do that this summer.
If you look up diagrams of the Niagara Escarpment on the internet, and you'll see it in like a semicircle shape.
Yep.
From where it goes in New York and then up, and then Wisconsin on the other side. And
up
and
through
just
Tobermory and in Ontario.
You know, and I mean, these ancient builders knew what they were doing. And if you look at the escarpment, you'll see what really appears to be stonemasonry.
Okay.
And I do think they were very big, very big humans.
Yeah, I think I'm starting to think more and more that this world, this realm, this place we live is much, much older than we thought. Civilization after civilization has risen and fallen. Probably.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think the history of Earth goes back a long, long time. It could take millions of years. Let's just say it, millions of years. I mean, they have found implements in coal seams.
Yeah.
Man-made implements in coal seams, like cups.
Sure. Cups. Yep.
Metal cups, things like that.
Spark plugs I've heard of, things like this. Yeah.
You know, so that's information right there.
So like I'm now on the fence of what this place is. Is it, I don't want to get into like flat earth and stuff like this, but like I'm not on either side. I'm in the fence. It could be either. I've never been up there to see, right? Who knows? Maybe I don't know what it is.
Well, I think at one time we knew who we were, we knew where we were.
Yeah.
We weren't asking all these questions
Right.
about where we came from and the shape of the realm and all of that. I think we knew.
Yeah.
And
Of course.
the nature of our route, the true nature of our reality has been shifted so that we don't understand how it all works together anymore.
I
And
think
we've
the
been given other
controllers-
information.
The controllers want us to believe we're random and just like not important and just a speck in it, right? I think we're much more important than that.
Yeah, there's a speck of life on a rock hurtling through space, and we're the only life in the universe.
And unimportant.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Very important. Yeah. So I really appreciate your taking the time to talk to me, Jim. And
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
You're welcome. And keep in touch.
Okay.
And we'll either do something like this again or figure out how we can collaborate
Awesome.
in other ways.
Sure.
All right.